That was great, Sharyar. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak in front of ISI. I was back in Arizona in 2019, and I was doing my residency, getting my master's through CCV. And I did actually attend ISI at that time. It looked a little different. There was only about 30 guys, and it's incredible to come back and just see all what God is doing through this ministry. Week in and week out, I just get to hear some stories because there are some people that go to the North Surprise campus that are a part of ISI, and it's awesome to just see everything that God is doing. When we moved back in June to join the staff at CCV to start the new North Surprise campus, when I got the call to come back to Phoenix, it actually really seemed like an answer to prayer. Back in 2020, I was about to graduate from the residency program, and 2 weeks before that graduation date is when COVID hit. And so it was a really tough time to be looking for a job, specifically in the church at that time. And God always has a plan. And so it really feels like full circle coming back and being a part of this. I'm married. I've been married for 6 years to Kirsten, and we have a 4-year-old daughter. And we're entering into a new season because Elsa has just started soccer. And she's in Stars. And I got to tell you, this season is a lot of firsts and new, but it's actually a season of testing my patience because she's 4 years old and she's playing soccer, and this is the first activity ever organized event she's ever done. And so just last week on Saturday morning, my wife and I were sitting on the sidelines. I didn't think God was calling me to coach the first year because I know my limits of my patience. And so God bless her coaches because we're sitting on the sidelines and that, literally the 4-year-old group, it's just a cluster. They call it the beehive years. And so they're just running around following the soccer ball. And we look out and we only notice 4 of our teammates and 5 of the opponents. And we're like, wait, where's Elsa? And my wife and I look down the field, and she's not in the game when she's supposed to be. She's actually using the landscape as like a tightrope, and she's looking at the birds. And my wife's like, "Should we do something?" I'm like, "No, we got like 5 more minutes before the game's done. This is on the coaches." And so it's been. Really, God bless those coaches because it's a test of patience to just. And she's not going to be the next Messi, but it's still been a lot of laughter and a lot of stories. And so we got a game right after this, and we'll see how it goes. Well, today I have a question for you guys. When you see a threat in front of you, when you start getting that fear creeping in, what is your response? You see, the response, the instinct inside us, gives us pretty much 3 options. Are we going to fight the threat? Or are we going to run away from the threat? Or are we going to freeze? You see, we actually don't really have too much of a choice. It's actually an instinct inside of us, and it can matter between the variables and how big the threat is, but we do choose one of those options without even thinking about it. And so when we have a threat in front of us, do we ourselves choose to fight it? Do we flight? Do we run away? Do we try and avoid it? Do we try and not think about it? Or do we freeze in place, becoming all immobile without, knowing what to say, do, or think? You see, what's interesting is there's actually not a best response. There's not a best option in this because, like I said, it's instinct. It's something that's inside of us. But out of all these 3 responses, as you're thinking about it for yourself, we can probably stem to why we respond this way. Because when a threat comes, it's disrupting something in our lives. And when we choose to fight it, or when we choose to run, or when we choose to freeze and we don't know what to do, it's actually an attack on our control. We want to remain in control, and so we try to avoid it, we try to fight it off, and we try and get rid of it. But ultimately, we want to remain in control because to be in control means to be comfortable, means to be in charge of our lives, in our direction, in our destiny. But I think when we are in control, we can sometimes grow complacent. And we can miss out on the God-given opportunities that God gives us in front of us. And so we're going to hear a story of a man in the Bible that chose to go towards the threat. He chose to fight, and it was a pretty big threat. You see, he went to the threat to find his calling in life, and we can learn something from that. And so in the Bible, one of the greatest Bible characters that I think is one of the most popular that you hear about is the story of David, King David. He had so many amazing challenges that he overcame, so many parts of his story that are recorded in the book of the Bible. But we are going to be mistaken if we think he did it alone. He actually had a group of mighty men that stood behind him. And so these mighty men, they were fierce warriors. And to be part of this club, it was a pretty exclusive club because you had to have a pretty extensive resume of doing some super cool things. And he's got a group of 30 men that just stand behind him, and he used this group that they advised him for their counsel and they were his bodyguards. And they were in charge of a lot of his kingdom to help him in this. And we're going to talk about a guy named Benaiah. And Benaiah, he's done some really incredible things to be put on this team. And he actually, the scriptures say, is the most honorable out of all these mighty men. And he was put in charge of being David's bodyguard. And David is recorded maybe over 12 different times of having an attempt for someone to try and kill him. He was always, having people that were coming after him, whether it's King Saul or others, trying to kill King David. So to be his bodyguard, you got to be a pretty fierce dude. And that was Benaiah. And so I want to read in Scripture. It says in 2 Samuel 23:20. It says, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. He struck down Moab's 2 mightiest warriors. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And so we know he struck down the mightiest of warriors from their enemy in Moab. But it also adds this one heroic feat of chasing a lion into a pit on a snowy day. I've always been fascinated with this story because Benaiah didn't leave the lion in the pit. No, we're left out of a lot of detail in this story, but we do know a few things of what it says. There was a lion, it was snowing, and he jumped into the pit and he killed the lion. But we can also know, out of historical context, some of the probabilities that led to this event. You see, it was pretty common for back then hunters to dig a pit and attract wild animals into the pit so that they could come back later and kill it and harvest it for meat or do whatever they want. And so to have a lion stuck in a pit, whether it's a man-made pit or a natural pit, it was pretty common. But it's in a pit. Benaiah is walking past this pit, and the lion's not attacking him. The lion is stuck in the pit. It can't get out. And it says he jumped down. And so it was feats like this that show why Benaiah is recorded in the Bible and a key player for David. And he actually went on to being a huge part of David's son Solomon's reign. And so he has so many other stories besides this one scripture, but I want to just talk about that pit on a snowy day where he killed that lion. And so the first point that I want to pause and talk about is he went to the fight. He went to the fight. We know that because it says he jumped down into the pit to go after that lion. And if you want to take this a little deeper, I want to just give credit where credit is due. There's a pastor named Mark Batterson, and he actually wrote a whole book about this. And the title is In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day. And you can look at that, and it really takes about 10 chapters and takes this to the next level. But we're going to just talk about this story right here, and you can look up that at a later date. But he says this in the book: we forfeit our dreams on the altar of fear, or we chase after the wrong things. We're so busy climbing the ladder of success that we fail to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. At the end of our lives, our greatest regrets will be the God-ordained opportunities we left on the table, the God-given passions we didn't pursue, and the God-sized dreams we didn't go after because we let fear dictate our decisions. You see, Mark Batterson also talks about this idea that psychologists have called the hindsight bias. You see, we have already removed the element of surprise because if it's recorded in the Bible, we already know Benaiah survived. Like, just imagine in present tense, you walking past a pit that's not doing, a lion is in this pit and it's not doing you any harm, but you still choose to jump into the pit. You see, all of the stories of history, we lose that element of surprise, that element of unknown, because we already know how the story is going to end. There are so many incredible stories of the Bible, but if we forget that they were also humans, and Benaiah probably didn't know how this was going to turn out, then we miss a huge piece of how much courage Benaiah actually had. Because I bet there's maybe some lions you're already thinking about in your life. And you're thinking, well, am I actually going to overcome this? Am I going to get through this? I bet Benaiah had some of those thoughts before he jumped into the pit. But he knew that this was a God-given opportunity. Because to say that I've killed a lion in a pit and put that on your resume, it gets you into some pretty cool places, like defending the king of Israel. And you get your name recorded in history when you do things like that. And so Benaiah went after the fight because of this God-ordained opportunity. And I just want you to think about your own life. Is there any opportunities that you might be avoiding because you don't know maybe what the result will be? You see, another pastor says it this: it is risky to play it safe when we serve a God who has a track record of doing the things in Scripture that we know he does. And they usually start by God telling us to get out of the boat. He's referencing the story of Peter when the disciples were on the boat and there's a storm. And Jesus, out of nowhere, starts walking on water, and they see someone in the distance that they know is Jesus. And Jesus calls out to Peter and says, Peter, get out of the boat and walk to me. And Peter's wondering, get out of the boat, walk on water in the storm? That's crazy. But it's faith like that God calls us. And it's opportunities like that really define our lives. And so the next point is, when Benaiah went to the fight, it was when the odds weren't in his favor. I've lived in some pretty snowy places. I'm really glad God's called me to Arizona so I can avoid that for a few years, hopefully for a very long time. But snow is not a favorable condition. Makes it tough to drive, makes it tough to see. And for some reason, the Scripture adds this little fact: on a snowy day. It wasn't, sunshine. It wasn't a small breeze coming out. It wasn't Arizona weather. It was snowing, and Benaiah still went after it. And so when the odds aren't in our favor, we can sometimes provide excuses. And I don't know what excuses you have. I know I have mine. And right now, it's kind of all surrounding my workout plan. Anything right now can take that out of my schedule. Oh, someone's going to, call me sometime today. I can't be at the gym because I got to take that phone call. And I got to tell you, I play this in my head, and the truth is, though, there will never be the perfect condition to do what we're meant to do. And if we provide those excuses, we can really just talk ourselves out of anything. And we can make these excuses and say, it's just not perfect. This isn't, God's way. The truth is, it will never be perfect. It will never be the ideal situation. And so what odds are we stacking up against ourselves that we can just remove? The last point that I want to talk about is that this animal was a bigger animal than him. Now, I love history movies. I love when movies are created based on true stories because they're more maybe relatable to me. And I love history where they show the underdog winning and just defeating all odds and attacking it. And I don't know, maybe you can think of like sports movies like Miracle, the 1980s USA hockey team, or where I go where I talk about history and war is like Hacksaw Ridge and getting to see the individual, just conquer all odds against him. Whatever that is, you're probably thinking of something. What you're not thinking, though, is stories where the big guy defeated the little guy. The truth is, those stories don't really make money. That's why movies aren't really making, stories, movies about those stories because what's the big deal? And so if you're thinking of a lion, but you already know you can defeat it, then maybe you're thinking too small of what God's placed in front of you, those God-given opportunities that you're already saying, yeah, I can take that. I can do it. Those are probably not those God-given opportunities. Because God's going to place something so big in front of you that it's going to take faith to accomplish. Because faith is only faith if there's a little bit of risk. Because if there's no faith, that means we got this covered. We got this. But when we add faith and when we add God, a lot of things can be accomplished. And a lot of things can happen. And so we got this guy named Benaiah who killed a bigger animal than him on a not so favorable day where it was snowing. And he also went to the fight. And so I want to just, I got a few more minutes, and I want to get real with you guys, if that's all right. To get real about myself, because I'm actually in a season of like self-discovery where I'm actually finding out that if you would have asked me a few months ago, I would have said, oh yeah, I go towards every fight. I love being known as the fighter, the guy that gets it done, the guy that takes any challenge and does it. But what I'm actually finding out about myself in this season is that when a big enough threat comes into my life, I actually freeze. I forget all, what my experience, my skills, I forget like what I can do, and I don't even know what to do. And part of it is what I'm working through is maybe I just didn't have any big lions that were really big enough threats to show this about myself. And now there's some big lions and I'm like, oh, I actually don't have an answer for this. And I'm working through that because when I freeze, it's like the worst feeling inside. I feel inadequate. I feel like I can't do it. I feel embarrassed. I feel shame. But the truth is, God's actually showing himself to me more than he ever has in this season. Because it's not up to me. Because I have a God that I serve that does incredible things, and I believe everything that happens in the scriptures. And if it's the same God that helped Benaiah, that helped David, that helped Moses and Peter and Paul on all those journeys, he can help me through my situation. So no matter if you're running from something or if you're freezing from something or you're trying to fight so much and you're just not getting anywhere, it's all right. Because we're in a group right here where we have men that are willing to help take on that fight with us. And we're going to go into small groups right after this. And my challenge to you is to become vulnerable. Ask for help. Ask for support. Because we can all be lion chasers and we can all go towards that fight. But we can also do it together because God calls us to community. And that's what He set us apart for and what He has called us to do. And so I'm going to bring up Steve right now, and he's going to give you a little bit more instructions. But thank you for letting me spend some time with you guys.
Caleb. Thanks, Caleb. The questions are up on the screen. There's been a phrase knocking around the last few years that Caleb's talk reminds me of, and that's lean in. How many of you have heard that phrase, lean in? Quite a few of you. There's about 180 guys here this morning. And my normal reaction when I'm confronted with a challenge or something that I have to do, maybe confront someone or rebuke somebody or just a difficult situation, whatever that may be, my normal reaction is I want to do all the easy stuff first in the day. Oh, I ran out of time. I never got to the hard stuff. Oh, what do you know? Well, lean in, do the hard stuff. And it's kind of biblical. That's what this tells me. So we've had a time of fellowship this morning. We heard a good talk from Caleb Wilson. Now we get a chance to break into small groups. I like to say it's moving you from being a spectator to a participant. We'd like to hear what you have to say. And we want to keep our groups to 5 or 6. If there's 6, 7 guys in a group, don't pull up that 8th chair. Go to a group where it's a little smaller. We want to hear what everyone has to say. We have a group in the back classroom with veterans and first responders. There's another group for men who are dealing with alcohol issues, or maybe they have dealt with them, currently dealing with them, or maybe someone in your family is dealing with them and you need some support even in that regard. John Bash leads that group in the back to the left. And then we have other small groups here that are just kind of just generic. So keep it a judgment-free zone, very transparent, and everyone has a red tag in each group, so they'll lead you with that discussion. All right? Be blessed. Make it a great day.